Bike packing, as the name suggests, involves taking your bike and packing it with a load of stuff. And then you can go on a great adventure.
Yeah, a bit like cycle touring. Touring with your cycle.
Exactly. Anyway, when you've got the extra weight of your luggage on your bike, it is going to handle slightly differently to when you're riding an unladen bike. So here are top tips to make sure you stay rubber side down. Oh, steady side.
Sorry, mate. It's
a bit heavy.
It takes a while to get used to this.
Now, before you set off on your bike ride, you first need to pack your bike. And there's a few hints to help you do this. The first thing is to try and keep the heavier items central on the bike, as this helps the handling. So that means putting heavier items like tools in the frame pack. Also, make sure all your kit is firmly compressed into the bags, because you don't want stuff moving around whilst you're riding. Finally, make sure that the straps on your bags are really nice and tight, as you don't want the luggage swinging around, as again, this will affect the handling. It's also worth noting that after the first few miles, the bags can kind of settle in as all your kit compacts, so the straps may need tightening up again. Now that the luggage is packed and evenly distributed around your bike, it's time to think about riding it. Now, it's an interesting experience to start with, as I found out, as your usual snappy handling bike may feel a little more sluggish. However, after an hour or so, you will soon get used to it. However, there is a few little tips that will help you when you first jump on your laden bike. Cornering with a laden bike is slightly different to cornering with an unladen bike. With your normal bike, you'd probably dive into the corner quickly. However, with the extra weight on board, you need to think of it as a more gradual process. Pick a nice arc around the corner and don't forget to look where you're going. Do all your braking before you get to the corner and before you start turning. The extra weight on the bike will make the bike want to sit up straight and carry on if you start braking while you're turning. You know, riding a laden bike is actually a great exercise in efficiency. On an unladen bike, you may be tempted to brake late and sprint out of corners. However, when you're carrying the extra weight, those accelerations soon add up and start to make you tired. So the key is to try and be really, really smooth and efficient. And that's a great skill to take into your everyday riding.
Now, without wishing to state the obvious, climbing on a fully laden bike is going to be slower, and quite a lot slower, because when you're carrying any extra weight uphill, fighting against gravity, it's going to be a lot harder. But instead of fighting it, you might as well just accept it, go a little bit slower, shift into a nice easy gear.
You can still stand up when you're climbing with a loaded bike, but you have to remember the dynamic of the bike is going to be slightly different. Instead of swinging your bike underneath you, like a bike packing Pantani, you may find it's more stable and you end up moving your body over the top of the bike. But remember, it works two ways. When you go back to your unladen bike, it will feel really wobbly and unstable.
Now you have successfully lugged you and your laden bike up a hill. The good news is that there is no disadvantage to riding a laden bike downhill. However, you will need to be careful because all that extra mass is going to significantly add to your momentum.
So a key thing to remember is that a heavier bike is going to take longer to slow down. So be cautious on your first descent and make sure you establish your stopping distance. Also, pay attention to your technique in the turns. Don't go in too hot because it could end badly.
Now, Josh briefly touched earlier on the importance of carrying your momentum through corners in order to minimize any hard accelerations, and also the effect that carrying extra weight downhill will have. Now, given that most people that are riding a laden bike are probably either out for a very long day in the saddle or multiple days, then it makes a great deal of sense to try and combine these two factors to your advantage, helping you save energy in the long run.
For example, if you're riding along a rolling road like we are here, it makes sense to try and carry as much speed as possible into the climb. This means that you don't have to pedal so hard so early on the climb, and those little energy savings add up to a greater amount over the course of a whole day.
Do make sure you give this video a big thumbs up if you're enjoying the bike packing content here on GCN. And if you'd like a little bit more information on exactly what we're taking, Josh very kindly talked me through it when we were actually back in the UK before we'd come out. So if you want to see that video, click just down there.